go ahead and get started. My name is Elena Quigley, and I am the president of Phi Theta Kappa here at Spring Valley College. I am also the District 1 Vice President for region. On behalf of our club, I'd like to welcome you all to Socrates Cafe, and today our focus is climate change. We'd like to quickly acknowledge our co-sponsors, the Environmental Club, the Outdoor Club, the Chefs Club, SVC Sustainability Committee, the Program Board, and our own student government, and thank them for all their contributions to make this happen. Before we get rolling, we just want to give each of those clubs an opportunity to introduce themselves and highlight what they're about. Is there a representative here from the Environmental Club?
Hello, I'm Stephanie. I'm a member with the Environmental Club, and I'm a second-year student with the Environmental Conservation Program. We provide support for SCC students to get together and share their knowledge for environmental conservation. We also provide an opportunity for students to interact with personnel on environmental conservation fields. This offers an opportunity for customers to improve their skills and knowledge of the discipline, as well as learn about employment opportunities in the field. Club highlight is our annual camping trip. We go somewhere and spend some time exploring and learning about all we can. Last year we went to the woods for Yellowstone 4 days, and we got to observe spring. This year we're going to Dr. Klaus Benson is our advisor, and we meet every Tuesday from 12:30 to 1:30. And if you're interested in our application, you can see us or contact us.
Representative from the Outdoor Club. Not here. Probably. How about the Sustainability Committee?
I'm Faculty Adams, faculty member here, and been working with the Sustainability Committee since before it was actually a committee. But the Sustainability Committee is a governance committee. It's a standing committee on campus. Our charge is to advise the college in becoming more sustainable, and we've been working behind the scenes, I guess, in fits and starts, trying to assess primarily the climate footprint of the college. What is the impact of running the college? And so in that vein, we have done a few greenhouse gas inventories to figure out what are our sources of climate impacting emissions. And we're just at the leading edge of the process right now of beginning to write a climate action plan. What actions are we going to engage in over the next few years to try to be in compliance with state laws requiring us to lower our greenhouse gas emissions by a certain percentage, and also as signatories of the President's climate commitment to move towards being greenhouse neutral as soon as we can, meaning zero net emissions, not zero emissions, but zero net emissions. And so very interesting. It's a lot of work, sometimes frustrating because the sorts of things that we're trying to change are very ingrained in institutional fiber of the college, but I think interesting and exciting as well. You'll learn a lot, and our meetings are open. If you want to come, you're welcome to come. I see a few faces that I've seen at some of our meetings. If you want to come and be part of the process of writing our climate action plan, just get a hold of me. I have email, and I'll let you know when and where our next meeting is. If you want to know, based on our greenhouse gas inventory, the most important thing that you can do to reduce the footprint of the college with respect to climate impacts is don't drive your car to campus. Find a different way to get to campus, or carpool, or move closer, or something. Because that's more than 50% of our footprint is just people driving to campus.
What's your name?
Ben Fackler Adams.
Thank you. We have a word from Jose, who is part of our program board here at Skagit Valley College as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Luis Rios, and I'm involved in the program board of the Skagit Valley those that don't know what program is a student life committee that focuses on setting up events for student success, student diversity, student life. For example, today for Earth Day, Sport Day event, we're trying to promote recycling by reusing our bottles. Fortunately, today we're not able to bring the bottles we ordered for students today, but we will have a sign-up sheet in the back. If you put in your name, student number, and your email, we will be bringing you guys back some legit stainless steel water bottles that will be distributed for students. For those that need a little more information on student life, or they're a little more interested in what we do, you can come to student life office and give your information.
Thank you. So we have decided to discuss the topic of climate change for our Socrates Cafe event. In doing so, we're honoring the fact that today is Earth Day, and we also see it as an opportunity to explore a subject matter that is not only popular in the national conversation, but internationally as well. It's also a subject that is a source of great debate, especially here in the States. There's a wide spectrum of opinions that range from absolute denial that the effects of human activity contribute to climate change, and then absolute certainty that these effects are driving climate change, and everything in between. There's more than just talk happening around climate change. President Obama has proposed that $1 billion in the 2015 federal budget be allotted to help communities prepare for climate change. It's happening on a state level as well. New York announced a $19.5 billion plan in 2013 to protect its 520 miles of shoreline from rising sea levels. In 2012, Louisiana released a $50 billion plan to address rising sea levels and land loss on the Gulf Coast. The Mississippi Delta is one of the fastest disappearing land masses on Earth, having lost nearly 1,900 square miles since the 1930s. On an international level, China, the world's biggest polluter, is also the biggest investor in green energies. They have initiated a plan to spend $275 billion in the next 5 years to deal with their air quality issues. A great initiative is underway in India to build a low-carbon, sustainable economic future and seeks to produce positive effects within this nation that ranks as one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases on the planet. And these are just a few examples. Today, we're pleased to have with us one of our own faculty members to help us dive a little deeper into this topic. Dr. Klaus Benson is the Department Chair of the Environmental Conservation Department for Skagit Valley College. He received his Master of Science in Wildlife Management and Conservation Biology at Copenhagen University in Copenhagen, Denmark. His thesis work was conducted at the Institute for Arctic Biology at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. And he received his PhD in wildlife ecology at College of Forest Resources at the University of Washington in Seattle. Please welcome him, and let's begin.
So with that introduction, you then know I'm wild, right? So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about how we're going to go about doing this. So I want you to sort of work in around tables, so you should find some tables, and then if you could arrange your, so let me ask you, how many are in doubt about climate change? That's fine, that's okay, so distribute yourself around some tables, and what we'll do is, so we'll skip this part. And what you will get for each table is general statements that are floating around out there, and then sort of taken with misspellings and back whatever, and the whole thing. And what I want you to do is go take 3 or 4 each, and then find something that supports what you would like to do. There should also be some index cards, so you can write some additional ones. Everybody got 7 tables. And we have about sort of 10 about 10 minutes for that. Okay? So, and then find some things that supports what you believe in, and then start putting that together, and then I'll give you further directions.
It was a 3-point shot, and she missed it.
I didn't even used to play basketball. Pretty good.
What is this all about?
I think we have to pick something that we support.
I support it all. We're screwed. Why don't you take a stack and why don't you take a stack and look and see.
We'll tell you where you want to go.
Oh, you're supposed to look here and see if there's something that supports
One
your
of the
position.
supporting statements.
Don't like that one.
Arguments that support your position. Whatever your position is. So we're dividing the two stacks. One you think is wrong and one you think is right.
I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's something that supports my position. They were just talking about Las Vegas on NPR, and they've got to have water.
They're recycling their sewage.
Here's the good news. Climate gate, is that like water? Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, what?
I don't know either.
They kick them aside. So you gotta go through two
I'm an accountant. You are the accountant. He said you could take accounting degrees before I didn't take classes, but I went to ACAP and I was talking to business management.
This is my baby.
That's why you like soccer. See, I'm forms not seen. Phi Theta Kappa.
We getting there?
I'm really a nice guy.
He hasn't. I've known him a year. Only 2 students have disappeared.
They're buried out in the private field out there.
They were killed with kindness.
I totally missed something. All that came back in the conversation is, yeah, they're buried in a field somewhere. You did what? So
No, I told you I had 2 students.
This is actually for us.
Okay, so it looks like you are sort of picking up things. What I want you to do next is you've got to build a poster, and there are papers over there. You've got pens. And use the statements from the left. But then what you've got to do is figure out what kind of data do you need to support your idea or what you believe in. Because these are all statements that you have, right? But what data would you need in order to support your position? Okay? What kind of data would you need? What do we need to measure? Right? So this is where you're given it sort of a whack at it. Okay? And then put that on the poster, and then we'll put them up, and then we'll sort of look at each other's poster for a little while and have a discussion. Okay? And then I'll end with the science view of things.
So should we talk about one of the toughest ones? Here's one, the grounds for cause for regulations. There's plenty of
Can you touch more on the group's position on
Droughts are caused by fluids. Try to show across. Western United States now is kind of tough. Unless you change the crops, you don't change the crops.
Going around, one of the things that is when we talk about modeling, right? We talk about modeling the climate out into the next 50, 100, or 200 years. And so, of course, what do we know when the model works? How do we know that we made a model that really is accurate in tracking everything that we need to know? And we do that by building a model, and then we run the past, right? Because we got 150 years worth of really good climate data, right? So you started in 1850, and then you run it forward, and if your model is good, it should follow and hit all the peaks and valleys of every year as you did. And the models that we have now is actually capable of doing that. So we have good confidence in the model that we're using to predicting future climate change. Okay, so just so you know that. So I just want to sort of give you another sort of. So here's sort of the projected outlook for CO2 in terms of atmospheric concentrations, and you can see that it started here at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and look at the number there that we started at, which was 275. Right? It was pretty low. We were over 400, hit the 400 mark, right? So we've almost already doubled the CO2 content. So what does it look like? There's a steady trend as we move forward. Each of these dips here is what's happening right now. That is the greening up of the northern hemisphere. Okay? All of that vegetation started to photosynthesize. And so there, literally, the vegetation is sucking up CO2. Okay? Well, to me, that's a that's sort of a wake-up call. Plant some more trees. They do it for free, right? And they do it very effectively, right? But we're really good at constantly reducing vegetation. For some reason, we love lawns, right? It's a weekly massacre of vegetation. So those are the trends. Some trends. This has just ended in 2001. We are at 400 now, so we add about 5 parts per million a year at this point.
Do I have your permission to stop mowing my lawn now, Klaus?
Yes,
Please.
So what does it mean when, and I wanted to show you some local data, okay? So this is days of discharge that were more than 40,000 cubic feet per second in Mount Vernon, down here. That typically translates into that they move furniture in Hamilton, right? Where usually that's the sort of the beginning of the flood stage, right? And so then what I did that for each year, I looked at when did that flooding occur, right? So if the gray are spring, the whites are winter, and the black are fall, okay? So if you were looking at the pattern, most of the flooding up till about 1970, somewhere in there, that translated into snowmelt in the spring, right? That's a normal spring. Now, as we move to after the 1970s, we now get dominated by fall floods, which translates into rain on snow events, right? That's because all of a sudden it gets warm. So we're not capturing all that snow throughout the winter. So we've completely shifted the pattern of flooding in the, and nobody sort of really picked up on that, right? So we already see changes.
Yeah, allow me to point out, that was a forecast for climate change in the Pacific Northwest that they started to make in the 90s that would happen. Right? And then now here's the data supporting it.
So if you're looking then at so the average discharge pattern, so what I did was I took the data from 1940 to 75 in A, and you can see there that we get that typical sort of spring floods, right? Well, that's what's going to flush the juvenile salmon out, right? And you can see here that now we're getting this start by month 10. October 1st is the beginning of the water year, that's why it's 10, 11, 12 that way. And you can see now that we have a much bigger hump there and we got a lot less in the spring, right? That pattern's going to continue to shift, right? If I had done more work and sort of only done the 90s and up to 2008, it would be more dramatic, right? So the point here is that we are actually already seeing changes, okay? So what does that then mean for, does anybody know how to shift this one?
The remote.
To get this one on?
No, you just gotta push the button. Thumb up.
All right, so what we did on a field trip a couple of years ago, we went up at Washington Pass, which is about 6,000 feet, and we took a tree core and of a mountain hemlock, and it was probably started in about 1650. Okay, so if we were looking at rings down here.
Try turning on the light if it's not on already. There's a little light. So there we go.
Hey, how about that? So if we're looking at the growth of this tree, sort of in the 1670 and 1800s, it is fairly consistent from year to year, the growth, because the snowpack was very consistent, right? Once we start getting up to the 1950s and forward, all of a sudden we get rings that are consistent with the past, and then we get some that are really, really narrow, which are those El Nino events where we have very little snowpack. And so it dries out really early in the summer and they're going to have to shut down. And so what I did here, so here's the La Nina year right here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
So there are some wide rings here, and then there's some really narrow ones here. Here's another La Nina. Here's a couple of El Nino events where the rings are really sort of tight. So that's another evidence of this shift that we've seen, right? So there's plenty of evidence out there if you start looking for it.
What's the elevation of that, Klaus?
6,000 feet. And that means that sort of temporary snow zone, the variable snow zone, is moving up, right? So the other problem is that where we live and walking around here is where we see the least amount of change. Most of the change is in the Arctic and at high elevation, right? So, but the evidence is there. Any questions on that? So, we also talked a little bit about snow ice, and so what I have here, and unfortunately this is the Arctic sea ice extent. It's not. So one of the things is that in the gray is the average value from 1979 to 2000. The gray area around that line is the standard deviation, right? That's that normal variability. Then there are some new ones in here, and you can see that 2012, this is a low, so the low happens in September. There's a delay in terms of solar input, right? So that was really, really low. Now, the last summer was really, really good because it was kind of all the way close to the standard deviation. Translating that into the black, which is this year and this winter, we didn't gain anything because you can see it's still below what it would be. So even when we have a exemplary Arctic summer with little ice melt, it does not translate in. Okay? Why do we worry about that? This is habitat for a lot of critters. Okay? Polar bears, seals, sea lions, walruses need thick ice to float on. Okay? If a walrus got to haul out, they weigh a lot. You need a really thick piece of ice, right? And they need that because they actually spend most of their time out of water. They go in, they feed, and they go back up, take another long snooze again. Other thing I wanted to show you is there's a daily, and it does not exist in English unfortunately, but every day the actual snow mass of the Greenland ice sheet is calculated. And so you can see here, this is actually sort of water equivalent. And you can see that it's actually snow. If it's red, that means it's either snow melt or it is evaporation out of there. This is the average for the cumulative for the year. And so here's the actual data that we look at. And obviously, again, there's a lot of variation. And so it accumulates all the way into May when the snow storms pretty much stop. And you can see then there's the melt here, right? So that's what sort of is melting off. And so look at 2012-13, that was a very dramatic year, and even 11-12 was even a lot worse, right? The other loss is from icebergs, okay? The iceberg formation is speeding up, and so the Greenland ice sheet currently is at least 200 gigatons of ice in the hole. They are losing 200 gigatons of ice. Okay, so how much is 200 gigatons of ice? It's clearly a big number. It translates into 200 cubic kilometers of ice per year. Okay, and it's increasing. That's going to have an influence on the sea level, right? So that's why there's this tight monitoring of this. Any questions?
So Klaus, that kind of related to one of the questions that we had about the ice cube and the glass.
So sea ice doesn't mean anything, right? Because already this means a lot, right? And it's over 3 kilometers thick in places, right? So if this, I've been flying over the Greenland ice sheet for the last almost 30 years. And when I fly home in the summer, I see more and more lakes on top of the ice. And I see them up, I never really fly the same route, but even up here, I see lakes in the summer. It used to be down here, you would get more lakes, but they form up here in the end of the summer.
In the international politics textbook this year, they're saying that they're expecting there to be a new tax.
Yeah. Yeah. So that complicates things further because if you're going to transport oil and gas in these very sensitive areas, that's not going to be a good thing. All right, so I want to end with the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have a very short little video here. You can go and see other videos. And then I will end, and then the next event will take place about recycling. So I will start.
The scientific evidence is stronger than ever. That's your new observations. Improved understanding of the climate system response. Further development of climate models all point in the same direction. evidence on the climate system is clear.
IPCC 第50评估报告第一工作组主要做的是气候变化的科学。它对这个过去6年以来气候系统各个科学的分支，所以呢，在气候系统的实际观测中证实气候系统正在变暖。
We have looked at all the evidences that tell us how the climate has changed in the past and presently. Took that evidence to ask ourselves how we understand the climate system, what the causes of these changes are, and then take that knowledge and climate model simulation to ask ourselves what possible futures are there.
Many of these observed changes are unusual or unprecedented on timescales of decades to millennia. Ice cores contain an abundance of information about climate. Paleoclimate records show a close link between CO2 concentration and temperature. These trends are seen in current observations. Each of the last 3 decades has been warmer than all preceding decades since 1850, and the first decade of the 21st century has been the warmest.
Well, I think in AR5 we've done a much better job of expressing exactly how much different contributions, particular greenhouse gases, have contributed to global warming in the past and how they will contribute in the future. We're able to demonstrate that the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has increased by 40% since pre-industrial times, mostly as a result of human activities, and that the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are higher than they've been for the last 800,000 years in Earth history.
The effects of global warming are most evident in some of the coldest places on the planet. Ice sheets and glaciers worldwide are losing mass, permafrost is thawing, and the snow and sea ice cover in the Arctic is decreasing.
We are getting a lot of signals from the cryosphere in terms of warming. The most visible signs of warming can be found in the Arctic.
Arctic sea ice extension has shown a downward trend since 1980. A downward trend is also observed at the Greenland ice sheet.
The amount of mass that's lost in Greenland is about 6 times as much as what was observed 10 years ago.
The observed changes in the cryosphere have serious implications. With less snow and ice, more of the sun's energy is absorbed by the ocean and land surface. This is one of the powerful climate change feedbacks that influences the whole climate system. Based on multiple lines of independent evidence, it's now virtually certain that the ocean is warming.
The warming of the ocean will continue even if we stop the atmospheric CO2 concentrations to increase, because the time scale of the ocean circulation, which connects the surface to the deep ocean, is very large in the sort of hundreds and thousands of years.
There are 4 major contributors to sea level rise: ocean heat uptake, melting of glaciers, reduction of ice sheets, and changes in water storage on land. Improved scientific understanding has made scientists able to make a consistent sea level rise budget.
Over the 20th century as a whole, the dominant contributions are ocean thermal expansion and the contribution from the loss of mass from glaciers. Sea level has risen by about 19 centimetres by 1900 to 2010, and it's continuing to rise. We will have to adapt to sea level rise.
Our understanding of the climate system relies on combining observations and studies from many different scientific disciplines. With the help of supercomputers, this knowledge can provide climate projections for the future.
Climate models play an absolutely crucial role in this assessment report. They are the only tools that allow us to say something quantitative about the future. Historically, climate prediction has started with predicting weather, the atmosphere, then we included the ocean, and now we're at the point where we include every component in the Earth system, including the carbon cycle and the chemistry. So that allows us to have a really comprehensive view of all the relevant processes for future climate change.
Climate change projections require information about future emissions or concentrations of greenhouse gases, aerosols, and other anthropogenic drivers. A new set of scenarios was used to project the cumulative CO2 emissions in the future.
Model simulations employing the RCP scenarios tell us we have a choice. We have a choice to live in a world in which climate change is limited to less than 2 degrees Celsius, or in a world that is warmer than 4 degrees Celsius.
Climate models employing the RCP scenarios provide policy-relevant information on a regional level. For the first time, Working Group 1 has developed an atlas of global and regional climate projections, which allows decision-makers to see how climate might change in their regions. This can facilitate more informed decisions on adaptation strategies.
We have 3 key messages. A warming in the climate system is unequivocal. That is based on the observations and the multiple lines of independent evidence. The second message is human influence on the climate system is clear. This is resulting from the combination of model simulations with the observed climate change. The third message is that continued greenhouse gas emissions cause further climate change and constitute a multi-century commitment in the future. Therefore, we conclude limiting climate change requires substantial and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions.
So I just have one more thing to add, and that is, if you really want a great read on climate change and that is very readable, this one here is called Clouds, Plagues, and Petroleum. It's by William Rudiman, and he actually picked up climate change signals 7,000 years ago when we started building rice paddies in Asia. So and it's also a great read in terms of explaining the sort of the scientific process in publishing data and those kinds of things. And that it's several years old, so I'm sure you can find a cheap copy online somewhere. So Rudiman.
You're going to the thing, Bob.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
So, Clouds, Plagues, and Petroleum.
So Klaus, what do you think the main reason we're not acting to counteract some of those things now?
Well, I think that, I mean, it's highly political here. If you go to Europe, the discussion is how we're going to adapt. So they're talking about building dikes and gates to flood situations around large cities. And so, which being proactive at this point is going to save all your cultural resources, right? I mean, you know from when you have all these events that create damage. I mean, lured down for so long that and it's much more expensive. But there seems to be an unwillingness to put money up front. Because one thing that's sure is it will cost a lot of money, either way.
Can I add something real quick? My name is Nathan Bowman. I work with that group, Community Climate Action Group over in Anacortes. And what he's saying is definitely true. Policy is a big part of it, but I think also a big part of it is just education and understanding on all kinds of personal levels. There's, you know, the answer to me, or at least in a lot of, I have a degree in engineering from the University of Washington, and I've done a lot of research in this. It's not about necessarily spending a lot of money to buy a new Prius or anything like that, or doing anything. Eating one less steak a week or eating a half a pound of less meat a week can be basically the same equivalent reduction in environmental impact as changing from driving an SUV to a Prius for that week. So there are a lot of simple, this is a problem that every single one of us here has to participate in solving. And while policy is going to be, you know, play a big role in it, you know, there's a lot of big players out there. IKEA just allocated $2 billion between now and 2020 to be a net zero company by 2020. So, you know, but it's on a personal level to change organic gardening, get rid of your yard, put in a garden. You know, that's the simplest thing. In World War I and II, they called on for victory gardens. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that movement, but 1 in 5 Americans basically had a garden in their yard because it helped support the war movement against the Nazis, and this is a similar type of call to action. Anyway, thank you. I have business cards, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and all of that if you guys want to find out more about us.